All right, let's get right into it. Today we're talking about the psychology of, well, you. But not just one version of you. We're talking about the two yous that exist inside all of us, the person you are right now and the person you secretly wish you could be. We're going to dig into why we create these different versions of ourselves, especially when we go online, and what it all means for our own happiness.
So, let me ask you something. Think about your social media profile for a second, or your gaming avatar, or heck, even the vibe you give off in your work emails. Is that person really you? Or is it, a slightly shinier, more confident, maybe even a little bit more heroic version of yourself? We all do it, right? But why?
This little habit of ours actually points to a huge idea in psychology, something first explored by the legendary Carl Rogers. He talked about this gap, this space between our real self, who we actually are, with all our quirks and flaws, and our ideal self. That's the person we dream of being, the person we often pretend to be online. And believe me, what happens inside that gap, that's where things get fascinating.
Okay, so what is really going on in our heads? Let's break down the theory behind this internal tug-of-war. We're going to look at the real psychological cost of that gap between who we are and who we want to be.
Rogers actually had a great word for this feeling. He called it incongruence. You know that feeling, that kind of mental discomfort, that anxiety, or even sadness that just creeps in when who you are doesn't match up with who you want to be. And the bigger that gap gets, well, the worse that feeling gets.
So, fast forward to the 1980s. A psychologist named E. Torrey Higgins took Rogers' idea and really ran with it. He came up with something called self-discrepancy theory, which basically gave us a much more detailed map for understanding how this whole internal conflict messes with our emotions.
And this is where it gets super interesting. Higgins didn't just talk about the real and ideal self. He added a third one, the ought self. The ought self is who you think you should be, based on all those external pressures, right? What your parents expect, what your boss wants, what society tells you. And get this, the type of gap you have determines the specific bad feeling you get. If there's a gap between your real self and your ideal self, you feel kind of sad, dejected. But if the gap is between your real self and your ought self, that's where anxiety and fear come from. It's like a perfect roadmap for our own bad moods.
All right, so these are classic theories, but how do they hold up today in our totally plugged-in digital world? Well, it turns out the internet is basically the perfect playground for our ideal selves.
I mean, think about it. The internet is where our ideal selves get to come out and play. On Instagram, it's all about the highlight reel, right? The amazing vacation, the perfect relationship, the big career win. And in online games, it's even more literal. You can create an avatar, a character that is stronger, braver, or more charming than you feel you are in real life.
So this brings up a massive question, doesn't it? Is all this online ideal self stuff just a healthy, harmless way to explore who we want to be? Or is it something deeper? Could it be a sign of an unhealthy escape from reality? Well, some really cool research gives us some clues.
So back in 2007, a study looked into online gamers, and the findings were, well, pretty much what you'd guess. You can see it here. The gap between the players' real selves and their ideal selves was pretty big. But the gap between their online character and their ideal self, tiny, almost zero. For a lot of them, their gaming avatar was basically a perfect match for who they wished they could be. But here's the kicker. For the players in the study who are already dealing with stuff like depression or low self-esteem, this tendency to build a super idealized online character was even more extreme. And that suggests something really important. For some people, the online world isn't just a fun distraction. It's a refuge. It's a powerful escape from the pain of that real-world gap.
So this whole gap between our real and ideal selves, it's not just some abstract psychological idea. It's actually something physical, something we can literally see happening inside our brains.
That's right, it's not just a feeling or a thought.
It is a full-on biological event happening in your brain's reward center. And here's where it gets kind of weird. When you think about your ideal self, that perfect version of you, it actually lights up the same part of your brain that activates when you eat your favorite food or do something you love. So on one hand, dreaming about who we could be literally feels rewarding, but at the same time, that same dream can make us feel totally inadequate. What a paradox, right?
And if you thought that was wild, it goes even deeper, like all the way down to our DNA. So there's a serotonin gene that comes in different versions, a short one and a long one. Now check this out.
For people who have 2 copies of the short version and they're already a bit more prone to depression, thinking about their ideal self actually made them feel less satisfied with their life. But for folks with 2 long copies doing the exact same thing, thinking about their ideal self made them feel more satisfied and motivated. It's insane. Our own genetic lottery can decide if our dreams lift us up or tear us down.
Okay, so if this gap can cause so much pain, what's the solution? How do we close it? Well, let's go back to Carl Rogers. He believed the answer isn't to just chase after some perfect image of ourselves. Instead, he said we need to listen to something that's already inside us.
He had a fancy name for it, the Organosymic Valuing Process, or OVP for short. But you can just think of it as your inner compass. It's this built-in, natural gut feeling that guides you toward the things in life that are actually genuinely right for you. Not what your parents want, not what social media says is cool, but what's right for your true, authentic self.
And this OVP, it's not something you think your way to. It's not a pro-con list. It's that gut feeling, that deep down sense that something is the right path for you, even when you can't logically explain why. It's that little whisper inside that says, hey, maybe you should be an artist, not a lawyer, even when everyone else is pushing you toward law school.
And this isn't just some feel-good philosophical idea. There's real research to back it up. One study had college students rate their goals over time, and guess what happened? Without anyone telling them to, their priorities naturally started to shift. They started caring more about fulfilling goals like personal growth and relationships, and less about materialistic stuff like money and fame. It's like our inner compass is constantly, quietly trying to steer us in the right direction.
Which brings us to a really popular buzzword these days, grit. We're always told to be persistent, to have grit. But here's the thing. What good is all that persistence if you're stubbornly climbing the wrong ladder? Yeah, everyone talks about grit, the power of just never giving up. But a fascinating study from 2015 dropped a bit of a bombshell. It found that grit, all by itself, doesn't actually lead to life satisfaction. Nope. Turns out just working hard, for the sake of working hard, isn't the secret to happiness.
So what's the missing ingredient? It's all about what you're applying your grit to. The research showed that grit only leads to genuine well-being when it's combined with authenticity, when you're pushing towards goals that actually line up with your true self. And it only leads to life satisfaction when it creates what's called a sense of coherence, that feeling that your life makes sense, that it's all pointing in a meaningful direction. And that's where your OVP comes in. That inner compass is what tells you where to aim all that powerful grit.
So, when you put it all together, the path to a more fulfilling life becomes surprisingly simple. Step 1, listen to your gut, to that inner compass, your OVP. Step 2, figure out what goals feel truly authentic to you, not to anyone else. And step 3, apply all that amazing grit you have to those specific goals. That's it. That's the formula.
And so, I'll leave you with this to think about. If you could just tune out all the noise for a minute, all the expectations, all the shoulds, what is your gut, your inner compass telling you to pursue? What's the path that feels right deep down?